Autumn Time by Lentini. This story is set in the future where technology and artificial or fake objects have replaced many aspects of the life that we take for granted today. As you read, make note of the details that support how the narrator reacts to a real tree. I saw my first tree today. Dad finally broke down and took us to East Boston Urban Center after Mom had been harping on it for the past 2 weeks. I think he was glad we went after all, because he was smiling quietly all during the trip back. Dad used to tell me stories about the trees that still existed when he was a boy. They weren't very many even then, with the urbanization program in full swing, but most people had seen at least one tree by the time they started school. It wasn't like nowadays, at any rate. Oh, I've seen the plastic trees. Practically every street has a few of them, but you can tell the plastic ones are artificial just from looking at the pictures in the microdot library. This morning, when we got up, the house was all excited. Mom dialed a light breakfast of toast and synthetic milk so that we wouldn't waste time eating. And when we finished, the three of us took an elevator bus up to the 4th level, where we caught the air track to Brooklyn. From there, we took another elevator bus down to the main level, rode the monorail to Inner City Subway Station 27, and caught the second sublevel AA train to Boston. Our expectations were so high that Dad and I didn't mind it when Mom told us again how the tree was discovered. The O'Brien home was one of the few examples of old-style wooden structures that had been demolished in Boston's urban renewal campaign at the turn of the century. The family had been able to avoid this because of its wealth and political influence, and the house was passed on through several generations to the present. Old Man O'Brien had no heirs, so when he died, the family home went up for auction, and the urban center bought it. When local officials arrived for an appraisal, they discovered that the house had a backyard, which is forbidden by zoning restrictions. In the yard was a live tree. An oak was what Mom called it. When the news of the tree's discovery leaked out, quite a few sightseers stopped by to have a look at it, and the local government, realizing the money-making potential, began charging admission and advertising the place. By now, it had become a favorite spot for school field trips and family excursions such as ours. Why does the tree become a tourist attraction? It belonged to a wealthy, influential family. There are very few real trees remaining. It is the oldest known tree in the city. Oak trees are especially rare. When we arrived in main Boston, we rode the elevator bus up to ground level and caught a monorail out to East Boston Urban Center 3. An air cush taxi took us the rest of the way to the residence. The home itself was unimpressive. It had none of the marble gloss or steely sheen of modern buildings, but was rather a dull white color, with the paint peeling in places. Dad paid the admission fee, and we spent the next 15 minutes on a dull, guided tour of the house. The rooms were roped off to keep people from touching anything, but there were no windows facing the illegal backyard anyway, so it really didn't matter that I couldn't enter the rooms on that side. My mind was on the tree, and I thought the inside tour would never end, but soon we were walking through the doorway hidden in one of the bookshelves and into the backyard. The yard was big, at least 10 by 20 feet, and I was surprised to find real grass growing on the sides of the concrete walkway built for tourists. The grass didn't distract me for long, however, because I couldn't help noticing the tree. It was located at one end of the yard, and there was a mesh fence around it for protection. It was similar in form to the plastic trees I'd seen, but there was much more to it than that. You could see details more intricate than in any artificial plant, and it was alive. Long ago, someone had carved their initials in the bark, and you could see where the wound had healed. But best of all was the smell. It was a fresh, living odor, alien to the antiseptic world outside with all its metal, plastic, and glass. I wanted to touch the bark, but the fence prevented me from doing so. Mom and Dad just breathed deeply and stared up with their smiles on their faces. The three of us stood there for a moment, and then the tour guide told us to make room for the next group. I didn't want to go. In fact, I almost felt like crying. On the way back home, Mom and Dad were silent. I read through one of the brochures the guide had passed out. When I came to the part that said the O'Brien home would be open only for the rest of this year, I was sad. They intended to tear down the place to make room for some kind of insurance building, and the tree would have to go too. For the rest of the trip, I just sat still, fingering the object in my pocket, which I had picked up off the grass in the O'Brien backyard. I think it was called an acorn. At the end of the story, the narrator takes home a souvenir from the tree, carves their name in the trunk of the tree, thinks about seeing the tree one more time, begins to cry about the tree because the tree is going to be cut down.